تصویب قطعنامه پارلمان اروپا به اتفاق آرا در اجلاس رسمی استراسبورگ. سخنرانی‌های نمایندگان در حمایت از تأکید قطعنامه بر محکومیت قتل عام و گروگانگیری در اشرف و فراخوان به عراق برای آزادی فوری گروگانها. 10 اکتبر 2013 18 مهر 92.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, as Mrs. Kronberg has just said, we are witnessing Iraq spiraling back towards civil war. When the Americans left Iraq, they said they were leaving behind a functioning democracy. What they have left behind is, in fact, a basket case. We see increasing violence, increasing discrimination against minorities, harassment against the Christians, the Shabaks, the Turkmen. We have seen recently the appalling massacre in Camp Ashraf, people with their hands handcuffed behind their back, shot brutally in the back of the head, executed, the wounded when they were taken to the clinic, executed there, 7 hostages, including 6 women, kidnapped, and there is no question at all that this was done by the Iraqi forces under the instructions of Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. We know, as Catherine Ashton has said and UNHCR has said, these hostages are being held by Maliki in Baghdad. They must be released now or he must face the consequences.
Thank you very much. Frau Makovai.
What we're seeing happening in Iraq is extremely serious. On the 1st of September this year, the Iraqi security forces attacked Camp Ashraf. 52 people were killed, and a further 7 people were killed, including women. And people have now been taken to an unidentified place in Iraq, and there is risk that these people will be deported to Iran. These people should be protected by the Geneva Convention, and the forced repatriation of these people to Iran would mean that they would be subject to persecution by the regime, and that would be a massive violation of international law. The Huria camp, where they've been forcibly transferred to, along with the Ashraf camp people, along with a series of other Iranian camp residents, is actually a detail that has been part of a very bloody incident, the bloodiest since last year, and we have to have a proper investigation of this incident now.
Now we will hear Mr. Petri Savanaka.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With 5,000 civilians killed and 10,000 injured since the beginning of this year, the plight of the people of Iraq is unbearable. While the fate of all Iraqis is of equal importance, and we have to call for different parties inside Iraq to find a peaceful solution, there is a single case of violence that stands out. It stands out because, in this case, the Iraqi government was clearly responsible for the safety of refugees in Camp Ashraf. People had a status, a badge on their chests, a badge saying that they were United Nations protected refugees. I am, of course, talking about the September 1st horrible slaughtering of 52 unarmed Iranian refugees inside the camp. And this resolution is absolutely right in strongly condemning this attack. The Iraqi government cannot bring back those lives, but what they now have to do is to immediately and unconditionally release the 7 hostages and allow an international investigation. And we, as the European Union, must put pressure on this to happen. Thank you.
President, colleagues, first of all, I want to agree with other colleagues and express my condolences to all of those people who have lost families in the sectarian violence in Iraq. 1,000 people have died just in September, and then, of course, there was the terrible Camp Ashraf killings. This has to be condemned.
Mr. Murphy now.
Thank you, President. 4 days ago in Baghdad, 51 people were killed and 107 others were wounded in a suicide attack that targeted Shiite pilgrims. That's the devastating reality of Iraq today, a country of escalating violence where, according to the UN, 800 people were killed in August alone. We've also seen what can only be described as a brutal massacre at Camp Ashraf, with 52 unarmed people killed and 7 taken hostages by Iraqi forces. The responsibility for these attacks lies not just with the various sectarian murder gangs, but also with those who cheerled and actually implemented the war and occupation of Iraq. They had no qualms about imposing a puppet regime to continue the repression and inequality, and they had no qualms about promoting sectarian division.
Mrs. Isaiah.
Mr. Speaker, our resolution is dealing with many cruelties in Iraq, but the worst of them all is the attack to Camp Ashraf on the 1st of September. 52 innocent and unarmed Iranian refugees were executed. Women were particularly targeted. Only 1 woman survived and the rest were killed or kidnapped by Iraqi forces. It's hard to understand why this has been kept so quiet. Why the international community have not forced Iraq to release these 7 refugees which were kidnapped during the attack. They are under the threat to be tortured and deported to Iran. This is the result because of the failure of the UN and US, which had guaranteed the safety and security of these people. I hope that the new UN envoy in Iraq will have learned from this bitter tragedy. We must make sure Iraq is held accountable for this crime against humanity.
Thank
you, sir. The situation in Iraq.
Thank you, President. The situation in Iraq continues to remain unstable. Are those people
of the defenseless garrison of Ashraf and dragged 7 persons into captivity as hostages? I ask you, how much longer will we tolerate such infringements of human rights?
Thank you. A long list of recent attacks, acts of terrorism, are mentioned in our draft resolution. Thousands of civilians killed, thousands injured. We also strongly condemn the attack on Camp Ashraf on the 1st of September, which left 52 Iranian refugees dead, and the abduction of 7 residents, including 6 women, who are believed to be held in Baghdad. We call for their immediate and unconditional release. Thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Commissioner, what is happening in Iraq today is really unacceptable. We see a clear growing influence of the Iranian regime in Iraq, which unfortunately has turned that country into a dictatorship, maybe no better than before. The brutal attack on Camp Ashraf last month was a clear evidence of this. 52 defenseless and unarmed refugees who had protected person status were executed one by one by the Iraqi troops who were supposed to protect them. We in this parliament had warned this for many years, and unfortunately no one took it seriously. The resolution today strongly condemns Iraq's role in this massacre and calls for the immediate release of the 7 hostages who were abducted by Iraqi forces during the attack. We know that are kept in Baghdad. If they are not released, then we should definitely think of punishment and to start by cutting European aid to Iraq.
Okay, last but not least, Kelly.
Thank you, President. There are many examples of this violence. The worst is which occurred on the 1st of September in Camp Ashraf, when, as we said, 52 people died from Iran and 7 were kept hostage, 6 women among these. We need to call on the authorities of Iraq to release these people from Baghdad. They need to cooperate with an independent investigation in order to find the terrorists, to bring them before court and to condemn them. Thank you, President.
Thank you.